We're now going to hear from Arkivum, and Jack Leach is going to take the floor. So, Jack, I can see you lighting up there. Lovely to see you. And the same for you. If you've got 20 minutes for a presentation, then we're going to dig into some questions with you as well. And I'll let you introduce yourself and Arkivum's products and services. So, over to you.
Cool. Thank you very much, Sarah. And yeah, hello, everybody. My name's Jack Leach. I'm the head of customer experience at Arkivum, digital preservation and archiving solution. So on the topics that we've covered so far today, a lot of sort of recurring themes have come up. And this is really what I want to touch on today as part of my presentation. When we speak to prospects and customers, especially around procurement, other than the main kind of technical questions that we get about product fit and things like that. The main ones we then get after that are around support, migrations, and then extracting the most value from a system. The initial people that will be reaching out to us and speaking to us often, they get it. But they need to engage with other elements of the business or the institute that don't understand or appreciate the importance or the value of digital preservation, what digital preservation is for, why it's crucial in a lot of cases, and how that can then actually impact their business. Usually there's a core use case for the digital preservation system, but oftentimes other data can be identified that would be of value to migrate after this. So being able to understand the system capabilities, having ownership of the system as well, and being able to provide that information to other potential stakeholders can help extract that additional value from the system. And that's an important consideration when you start to go into these conversations. So as part of my presentation today, what I wanted to do was just to show you a handful of slides from one of our onboarding decks to show you some of the support and processes that we go through, and then also to move over to the system to show you some of the features and functions of the Arkivum platform to help with that migration process, and also to help to, again, streamline some of these things to add value to the business case for people in the procurement department as well. So let me just share my screen, and I will start with just a handful of slides from my deck. Hopefully that is all showing okay for everybody. I'm actually operating off a very terrible angled screen, so you're gonna have to look at the side of my head whilst I present these slides, unfortunately. But yeah, here we go. So these are just a few slides from the onboarding deck that we have. As you can see, we have quite a structured approach to onboarding. We ensure that we fully understand the use case requirements for kickoff before going through to building the tenant according to customer specifications. We go through a period of training, and then also understanding the customer requirements for validation, testing, understanding the various different people within the business that need to be getting involved with that. If we're just dealing with a single archivist, then great. If we're dealing with more of an enterprise solution where there's going to be multiple people involved in this process, then that also needs to be understood at this stage as well, so everybody's go live plans and requirements are well understood before we actually then go into that go live period and then assist with that first ingest. We offer full support as we're going through this as well. So my team, the customer experience team, we're very much working alongside customers as we go through this process to help them understand the support that they will receive as part of the onboarding as they venture off into utilizing Arkivum in the go live. As I mentioned before, part of this can involve understanding the various different customer roles, and then also matching that up with the various different people in Arkivum that will be there to support the delivery of this project. Quite often there'll be multiple different business owners or people within the institute that need to be involved with this process, and they need to be looped in and included in the various different plans. So being sensitive to that and the requirements of the business, again, is a key part of that ongoing support as part of the onboarding process. And this is something that we get asked quite a lot when we're responding to tenders or working with people as part of the procurement process, is understanding who is going to be involved in this project and how we can communicate and work with them. And then going on to things like illustrative timelines, want to obviously align this to customers' requirements and go live dates. So we'll build out various different plans and work streams to ensure that we're hitting all those key timelines. And this goes from the point at which we are implementing the solution through to tenant commissioning, training, migrations of the initial data set, customer QCs, go live, hypercare windows, and all those kind of things. And as part of this, we're also supplying and providing a whole suite of supporting materials. So we have things like product validation and validation packs, where we are mapping to various different industry best practices and guidelines to ensure and prove that we are aligning to these in the various different areas of our product and our system. So that's kind of how we tackle that first question, that first piece around support and what we offer and what we're able to provide to people as they start to get up and running with the system. If we then move across to the platform, I can then highlight some of the features of the system which we can utilize to help with that migration piece. So that was the second part that I mentioned at the start, around migrating data into the system and extracting the most value from the system, from the system. Again, this is a cool sort of selling point from the people that are initially looking for a digital preservation system, how they then provide this information and provide the use case of the system to the other people in the business who may not necessarily understand what digital preservation is or why it's so crucial. So within Arkivum, there's a lot of automated functions within the system, things like automated fixity checks, automated data replication and redundancies and backups and things like that to ensure that data remains available and accessible over multi-decade periods or however long it needs to be stored within the system. We can also align to any data model or any metadata schemas as well. So we need to understand that data and how it should all be organized. And this can often prove one of the sort of factors that slows down the onboarding and the go live process is that kind of that's paralysis when it comes to noting that you have a lot of data and you don't know how you're going to get it from source system A to source system B. You don't know how you're going to map it or structure it or format it or anything like that. So we've developed a few tools within the system to help support that process and to streamline that, to make that a little bit easier to organize that data and do that piece. So if we go to explore and have a look at some content that we've actually ingested into the system, an example that we have are some videos that were extracted from the Library of Congress. This is the original folder structure that was ingested into the platform. And as you can see, these are just relatively nondescript folders with a nondescript file name for an MP4 file and then an associated metadata JSON file. The reason why we have this view in the system as well, just to make a note of, is because we don't believe in vendor lock-in in any way, shape or form. So we always maintain the originality of the content as it's being ingested into the platform. So the original folder structures, the original file names, so that when we need to return that content to a customer, they can extract the data themselves on demand from the system. They don't need to come to Arkivum support to get their data back out. They remain owners of the data within the platform. It'll be returned to them exactly as they gave it to us. And we can also extract all of the metadata, the hierarchy information, which I'll show you in just a moment, and all the audit information associated with that as well. So if you ever needed to extract content out of the system, you remain in complete control of that. But again, from this kind of view of the data, it's not particularly helpful. If I was somebody who didn't have a deep understanding, or even if I did have a deep understanding of this data, it wouldn't be very easy to navigate and find that content. So what we've been able to do is to run a preprocessor module on this data to actually transform it and give it structure to extract and map the metadata associated with this content as well, and to really make it come alive and make it easier for individual users to then navigate and find that content. Within this process, there's automated features within the ingest process as well to form APEs and DIPs as well, so that we can export those to other discovery systems if we need to, again, and we can align that structure that has been built within the platform too. And this is where the Archive Explorer comes in. So this is the hierarchical view of the data within the system. And I can see in here that Library of Congress extract that I've got is now being organized into a more useful structure. So I've got things like dates, subjects, contributors, genres, summaries, that kind of thing. If I open this up, then it then drills down into the next layer. So I can see things like dreams, police, animals, ghost plays, that kind of thing. And again, I can dive into these and then find the relevant information associated within each of these. So this has brought this data to life in a way that the original folder structure just really didn't. If I was looking at that original folder structure, I'd probably struggle to find anything within the system. But we've used this pre-processor module to actually unpack that data, to align the metadata, to build structure out of that metadata, and again, as part of the ingest process, to index that metadata to the files within the system too, so that when I actually come to view a file within the platform and have a look at the metadata schema associated with it, I've got all of that lovely enriched metadata, which is available for me to view and browse within the platform. And I can utilize this to search and filter for content within the system too. So rather than having to extract all of this manually out of the individual JSON files that were associated with this, I can just simply run the preprocessor within the system to build this metadata out for me, to generate this structure for me as well, to perform that indexing, which I can then utilize to search and filter and discover content within the platform as well. So that's an example of a preprocessor module to help speed up that migration process. Again, it's designed to help avoid delays in preserving content due to not having the resource to be able to build out complex metadata schemas or data models. We can build these preprocessor modules around any sort of data set, really. We can take things like Droid reports and utilize that to help map and build the structure to the data. We can utilize pre-existing folder structures, or we can utilize exports of metadata from pre-existing systems as well. So there's lots of flexibility within these modules, and we can build them on demand and have them associated with the system to make this ingest process very, very rapid. And then on top of this, we can also develop auto ingest functions within the system too. So where I have my ingest locations within the platform, I can associate additional locations with the system, things like SharePoint integration. So I can integrate directly with Microsoft 365. I could then utilize this location with an automated ingest and again, speed up the process of ingesting data within the platform too. So I can find folders within my SharePoint location that I want to ingest into the platform. I can select those folders. I can then select where I want this content to go within the Arkivum system itself. I need to give a prefix for this. So I just call this auto ingest for the time being. And I can also define pre-existing folder paths within the system, or pre-existing collections within the system as well that I want that data to be associated with. And I can then save this and generate this as an auto ingest function within the Arkivum platform. Again, this can be really useful because it means then that we can trigger an auto ingest event whereby anytime new content hits that particular nominated folder, it will just automatically be ingested into the system. This can also be done with or without metadata. We can utilize pre-existing structures within the system to align to what we have within the Arkivum system itself. It also then means that you can give a nominated folder, for example, to a separate user who you don't actually want to give full unfettered access to the archive or the ability to ingest data directly into the archive. You can give them access to one of these auto ingest folders. This might be in S3 or SharePoint or OneDrive or something like that. And then they can dump content into the system, and then it will be automatically pulled into the platform without any further user intervention. From there, then other users and admins and archivists can then pick that data up, transform it, and do what they need to do with it if they need to rearrange the structure and things like that as well. But again, it allows that integration across a broader business sense for other use cases, other departments who may not necessarily be archivists or digital preservation experts, to actually preserve and safeguard their content in the system, and to have things like retention schedules and retentions applied to content as well to make sure it's safeguarded for the long term. So that was all I wanted to show, really. It was quite a short and sweet presentation. It's really just around answering those two supplementary questions that we get quite often when we're going out to these sort of procurement events. Again, around how support is provided in the platform, and how we can speed up migrations and take away some of the pain points around those migrations from different systems into the Arkivum platform, so that individuals can extract the most use from the system, again, as a selling point then to other people within the organization. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack. Well, can I invite everyone just to give you a quick round of applause for that? Thank you. And of course, the flip side of this is you've opened yourself up to questions a bit early as well. That may help us pull back a bit of time. So thank you for that. I haven't seen any questions appearing in the chat. So perhaps whilst people are putting some thoughts down, I'm just bringing it back to the sort of overall question, the overall theme of procurement. What sort of timeline do your customers typically take from kind of like first engaging with Arkivum to sort of being up and running? What's the sort of procurement, frame?
It really depends on a customer by customer basis. Some customers have quite a severe burning bridge that they need to get the onboarding and everything done quite quickly. I think the key thing in our processes is the flexibility to run alongside the customer requirements and timelines. We can actually get a tenant built, training completed, and support start to get into that customer-led validation piece really quickly. Again, with migrations, we can assist on migrations into the platform as well. So we have a validated data migration team as well that can help with that too. I think the key thing here is that we've done a lot of that validation legwork for our customers through the validation packs that we provide. So this has various different test scripts and execution plans, and then it also has the full traceability matrix where we've listed every element of our system. We've mapped that to the various different installation qualification validation tests that we do, and then again mapped that to the various different regulations and guidelines. So we can present that to customers at the point at which they start to onboard with us, and then that takes a lot of the heavy lifting off them when it comes to actually that validation piece. So it can actually speed that process up quite significantly. But typically it'll be anywhere between sort of a few weeks to a few months, depending on what they need to do as part of that.
Okay, so perhaps you answered this question in what you've just said, but so what information do organizations typically need to gather before speaking to you versus, I guess, how much of it is a sort of once they've chosen to engage with Arkivum? It sounds like it's quite an iterative, bespoke process with you helping them work with it. Which way do things tend to fall out?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, usually there is a particular use case that drives the implementation of a digital preservation system. So it might be a particular data set or a particular project or a particular use case that they need to look to. Then as they start to delve into the system and its capabilities and how it works, the realization quickly comes, we can use this for other things. We could use this for corporate heritage records. We could use this for even staff training records and things like that as well. So it starts to broaden and snowball. The key thing is to understand the goals of the onboarding, because obviously you have to satisfy that first before you start bringing additional complexity into the onboarding process or into the system. But once those have been solved, then it's easy enough to then start to bring those other use cases into the platform once those are well understood.
Okay, thanks, Jack. So just reflecting back on the panel session we had last week, and I'm sorry, I can't remember if you were in the audience or not, or others were speaking on your behalf, but everyone was emphasizing there the importance of sort of open standards and planning an exit strategy from the outset. So how does Arkivum support those aspects of procurement, both say open standards and then an exit strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So we align with the OAS model. So for things like open standards of preservation, getting data into the system. In terms of exit strategies, as I mentioned, the system is designed to avoid vendor lock-in. So when it comes to exporting data from the system, this can be done on demand. We can export all of the raw data, the raw content that was ingested initially, alongside the metadata, the hierarchical information, audit trails, any of the preservation copies or preservation packages that the system has generated. That can all be exported effectively at a click of a button. And we can also support exports in raw format or baguette format as well. So again, to align to those different requirements for open standards for exporting data from systems.
Okie doke. So another one which I've had, I'm sorry, my questions are a bit patchy. They're not consistent to every speaker, but I hope you'll forgive me because you're all taking a slightly different. Have you noticed any sort of common, from your point of view, I think, or from Arkivum's point of view, any sort of like common pitfalls in the procurement process, things that people classically do wrong that make you smack your forehead and go, "Oh, we've got another one of these."
I think the main one that we see that can really slow things down is where you have sort of a disparate set of use cases or a disparate set of individuals within an organization trying to pull the onboarding or the process into various different directions. Quite often you'll start a procurement process and it will be a particular use case, but by the time you've come to the end of the procurement process, that's expanded or other people have got involved or need things to be done. So it can be really helpful to have like a central single project manager, somebody who's keeping everything on track. From our side, we bring that person forward from an Arkivum point of view. But if the customer or the prospect can meet us with an individual who's going to be doing that and leading the project as well, that can be really, really helpful. So we're not ending up overcomplicating things or trying to do too many things, too many different individuals, I would say, stirring things in.
And I'm going to read something into what Paul has just posted in the chat channel. He's put scope, stakeholder creep. Do you see that as a risk there in that approach?
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's effectively what we've just sort of described is the project not being managed by an individual or set core set of processes or core set of goals. And you can end up with quite a messy procurement process. It's really important from our side that we bring somebody to the table from our point of view who has a good understanding of our processes and alignment. As I showed earlier in the slides, we have quite a rigorous onboarding process. It's got well-defined stages and things like that, so we can help to keep things on track. But obviously, it's very helpful from the customer side if they've got somebody aligning on that side of things from their point of view too.
Okay. And then, so Paul's followed up with saying, do you engage before the process with discovery at the data asset register / stakeholder prioritization stage?
Yes, yeah, we can do. It's often a stage that we do as part of the process is to understand the data sets that need to go in, understand the structure of that, also understand where that data is coming from, what needs to be done with it in terms of retentions, any renditions. So there's often a variety of different requirements when we're looking at different data sets. So we look to understand that early on in the process. We do actually have a completely separate process for migrations, which we align to. So we have, again, a scripted process which we can go through to help keep that on track and to understand those data sets effectively as well.
Thanks, Jack. So I'm just checking the chat again. Okay. Well,
Paul's trying to get me into trouble here. He's asking some very sensitive questions.
It's popped up in my chat now. Have you ever told a potential customer to go away and have a hard think before coming back again? Yeah, you could do that without mentioning any names, I guess.
I don't think we've ever phrased it quite like that. We've definitely asked customers for clarifications. We've definitely gone back to customers with questions around a particular data set and asked them to provide some more information, I would say. But yeah, if we've got scope creep on a particular migration, if it's kind of snowballing out of control a little bit, then we do need to kind of understand that before we just blindly go off. But this is where we have a scripted validated migration process. So we look to fully understand the data. We've got set steps that we're going to take. We have deviations associated with that as well. So if it's not aligning to this, then we can go back to the customer and say, look, this is an issue. We need to look at this. We need to do that.
Okay. All right. Speaking of scripts, and since we're getting near the end, I'm going to round off with my, for the benefit of UK probably audience, I'm going to channel my inner Alan Partridge and ask you the typical interviewer's question. So, like, what's the best question you've ever been asked during the procurement process? And by best, I could, take that to mean most interesting, most challenging, most revealing.
Oh, that's a really hard question to answer. Obviously, every single procurement has a different structure, a different set of questions, a different set of requirements. I honestly couldn't say. I don't know is the answer. I don't think there ever has been a best question. Whereas, yeah.
Okay. So
sorry.
You find that sort of every procurement that you engage with can be quite not unique, but sort of tailored to that particular organization. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's like that by design. But even the way that the process is presented to vendors can be vastly different. Some people want you to go onto an online portal. Some people just say, "Hey, give us your best effort presentation." Some people have a huge Excel document with 300 questions in it that you've got to answer in great detail. So yeah, every single one is different. I know from my perspective, I quite like more of a sort of structured process. Where we can answer questions and have a bit of a Q&A and provide supporting documents and things like that. That's often very helpful.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Well, again, before he does it, I'll remind people of the JISC's procurement service as one way to help sort of structure that process. There we go. He's done it already, as I said it aloud. And I would flag the other thing is, as some of you may be aware, that within the DPC, we are currently or about to start reviewing our procurement toolkit that we developed sort of a handful of years ago now. And so people should watch this space, and both vendors and customers, please, we're looking around for input on how we could do that better to help both sides of the equation to sort of make life easier for both people who are procuring digital preservation systems and the vendors who've got to respond to requests for information or so on. But I see Sarah lit up, so I shall pass back to her.